Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the interview room. It's always an honor to be invited by Vinnie Politan of CourtTV to be on his show as an expert guest. Here's another recent segment that I was asked to weigh in on. I hope you enjoy it. And if you haven't had an opportunity, would you please consider subscribing to our channel? Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
According to depositions taken in that case, Paul Murdaugh illegally purchased alcohol at Parker's convenience store using his older brother's ID. Surveillance video shows him leaving the gas station, towing his father's 17-foot boat. As he exits the store, you can see him raise his arms in a triumphant gesture to his friends. After attending an oyster roast, the six friends headed by boat to a bar in downtown Beaufort, South Carolina. And later, Murdaugh stumbles on the dock as he and his friends return to the boat around 1 a.m. Just over an hour later, the boat slammed into a bridge piling, and Connor Cook called 911.
What bridge is it? Paul, what bridge is this? Paul, what bridge?
911, where's your emergency? Hello? Police, fire, EMS. Hello?
We're in a boat crash on Arthur Street. There's 6 of us and 1 is missing.
The body of Mallory Beach was found nearly a week later in a marsh about 5 miles from the crash scene. The charges against Paul Murdaugh were dropped after his death, but the investigation is ongoing.
We reported, and it has since been confirmed by multiple attorneys who have clients related to the case, that there is an active investigation into possible tampering, possible obstruction of justice related to that boat crash. And specifically, Alex Murdaugh is one of the folks who was mentioned in connection with that inquiry.
In another bizarre twist, 3 months after his wife and son were shot and killed, Alex Murdaugh called 911 again, this time to report that he had been shot. The family's attorney says someone in a truck shot at Murdaugh while he was changing a tire by the side of the road. The injury was described as a superficial head wound. After he was released from the hospital, Murdaugh immediately checked himself into a rehab facility to treat an addiction problem, according to his lawyer. Then it was revealed that Murdaugh was accused of stealing millions of dollars from the law firm built by his family, and the South Carolina Supreme Court suspended his law license while the misconduct case is investigated. Just another chapter in this Southern murder mystery.
Okay, so there's a lot of things happening here. I mean, a lot of things happening. But the Hampton County Sheriff's Office released an incident report for the shooting of Alex Murdaugh. And if you look closely at it, there's a place to check off a box where it says visible injury, and whoever filled out the report checked out no. So a lot of people wondering, was he or was he not shot? Was he shot in the head or not shot in the head? Because the incident report says no visible injury. Well, the attorney for Murdaugh says, yes, he was shot. And then multiple news sources have now reported that the Hampton County Sheriff's Office is saying that the marking no was a mistake on the report, that it should have been yes. So what's going on here? Where does this investigation even start, and what should we be looking at? How do you figure out who committed these murders? And is any of this other stuff related to that? And if so, how do you figure out if it's related? Let's bring in our guests in Chicago, Illinois, private investigator Erica Morse, and in Charleston, South Carolina, host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonough, former homicide detective Chris McDonough is with us. All right, Chris, you're in Low Country tonight. Let me start with you. How do you approach all this? And what do you do with all this other stuff that's happening? If your job is to investigate the murder of Maggie and Paul, right? The wife and son of Alex Murdaugh. What do you do with all this other stuff that's happening? The rehab, the missing money at the firm, getting shot on the side of the road. I mean, what does all this stuff mean? The boat accident, the lawsuit, the investigation of that.
Yeah, so Vinny, the first place, obviously, I mean, there's actually 2 points that you could start. The boat accident, and to see if there's any repercussions from that, if any. And then the second, obviously, is where the 2 victims were initially found. And from there, you have to take away what are the weapons that were utilized. And in this particular case, you have a shotgun, which is a close quarters type of weapon, and then you have a long rifle. So the question is, who then potentially was shot first? And are there 2 shooters, or is there one shooter who is up close and then lies in wait for the second victim to come in with the longer rifle, making it look like 2 shooters? That could be a staging act of some sort. And then you have to try to establish why they were down there by the hunting quarters initially. And then you can start from there. Those would be your 2 starting points.
Erica Morse, I'm looking at this, and I think everyone's looking at it the same way. There's 2 possibilities here. Someone's out to get this family, right? Kill the wife, kill the son, attempt to take the life of Alex Murdaugh on the side of the road when he just happened to break down with a flat tire in his Mercedes. Despite with the Mercedes, you can drive on a flat. But that's another story for another time, right? Or Alex Murdaugh, his entire life is unraveling for whatever reason, and somehow he may be responsible for some of this stuff. To me, this is not an easy one to investigate.
Not for any one person. I suspect that there are probably teams of investigators on this entire situation, because you're talking 3, possibly 4 different cases where people are deceased, and one potential either hit or, there have been rumblings of self-infliction, a lot of conflicting stories here. And now you have all of this unraveling of the professional life. And this is a nightmare for any investigator or just any department as a whole.
Chris, there's one little fact, and I don't know if a lot of people are paying attention to it, but I am. For the murder of his wife and son, his alibi witness is now dead because he was with his terminally ill father. That's what he said. And that terminally ill father, unfortunately, has now passed away. So his alibi witness is dead. So what does an investigator do now to figure out his alibi? Because you can't, you can't go to the person who would have been the witness, who would have been the one who would vouch for him. Yeah, it's his dad and all, but still, at least someone could say something. So now you've got nothing but, I guess, what the defendant is saying? Not the defendant, I'm sorry, not a defendant, has not been charged, not even called a suspect, but what the person you want to investigate is saying, because he's the last one to see him and he discovers the bodies.
Yeah, how convenient, right? I mean, what a head turner that would be. And so now we have to say to ourselves, okay, how can we put him, if in fact, they're looking hard at him, how do you put him at the scene? Well, again, I go back to the weapons. You have to do, get ATF involved, start, digging through where potentially those types of weapons would be purchased, what would be in his name or what would be in his family's names, friends, brothers, uncles, those types of things. And then you have to go back to the second shooting, i.e. the self-infliction potential, which, just listening to the story as a whole, Vinny, I mean, that's going to be, quite the story. And one of the things that caught my eye right away out there at the crime scene, you had those SLED investigators with, metal detectors, and they're not looking where the flat tire is. They're looking in the bushes for shell casing ejection, which is, pretty problematic potentially, because I got the sense right away that they're going, wait a minute, if this guy's shooting out of a truck, Okay, why are they looking off to the side of the road with these metal detectors?
Erica Morris, just trying to, how can someone shoot themselves in the head, just enough for a superficial wound, but not enough to do serious damage? To me, the whole thing is and whether it was someone who fired it, or he did it himself, or he got someone to do it, any which way, this thing, it's a bizarre fact that you get shot in the head, but you're okay.
When I heard the reports over the weekend, I presumed this was a fatality because the reporting was that he was shot in the head. Then I saw that he was released from the hospital, and I kind of stepped back and said, wait a minute, what level of wound was this? It's possible. And you have to remember, he comes from a very prominent family that is very close with law enforcement on many levels. Owner of a lot of weapons, knows how to use them, is also a lawyer and thinks like a lawyer. And I just have to go back to something that authorities said back in June, and it's resonating with me now even more. And that is, they were initially very clear that they didn't feel there was an imminent danger to the public when Maggie and Paul were shot. And that was so striking to me then, and it really may start to make sense now.
Okay, Chris, how about the bullet, right? If he's shot on the side of the road and, he survives it, it must have grazed him, so it's got to be somewhere. How difficult is that to find when you're out in an open area like that? Like, how far could that bullet go, depending upon what the angle is that he's shot at?
Yeah, so the first thing, obviously, they're going to be looking for is any type of stippling, i.e., what came out of that from the gases of that round. Was it fired from inside that Mercedes? And if so, they're going to find it up on the liner of that vehicle. And that was pretty interesting that they took his Mercedes, into the tow yard. So the trajectory of that round could be, right, Vinny? I mean, anywhere. It could be, half mile down the road into a tree. It could be into that embankment that we were just, talking about with the metal detectors. The other thing to consider here that could be in play is how his vehicle tire was damaged. I've heard that it was slashed. And if so, was the gun, shooting concept just a staged event, but he cut himself potentially with that knife. If that is that in play here. I know I'm throwing a curveball, but these are all considerations I think that SLED is taking into account. And I know Mark Keel personally, who is the director of SLED, and those guys are good to go. I can't say anything about the people obviously in that county there, but this is obviously a very influential family for sure. There's no question about it.
So, Erica, as I look at this vast investigation that's taking place, if they're able to figure out whether or not it's self-inflicted or someone else shot at Alex Murdaugh, to me, that gives you much more focus when looking at the murder of Maggie and Paul. Because if it's, on the one hand, someone else firing that weapon, okay, now we got to see who's got a vendetta for the family, right? But if it's self-inflicted, all the focus is going one place.
Correct. The timing of entering rehab is so critical for me because I question, was this done to address a life in a situation that is crumbling actively, or is this fear? Is he in fear for his life and he knows that he's safe inside a facility? So that question is the key that has to be answered. Was he targeted over the weekend, or is there evidence of self-infliction here? Because once they can answer that question, and a lot of that will be done by the trajectory, by the evidence that they found at the scene, what the tire looks like in the vehicle, then they'll have a really good area to focus.
All right, Erica Morris, Chris McDonough staying with us. We're going to continue to follow this story. There are developments happening each and every day, so we'll stay on top of it. In the meantime, when we come back, we're going to open up tonight's unsolved case file involving a young girl, 14 years old, victim of a hit and run back in 2015. The family still looking for justice. It's time to open up tonight's unsolved case file. And please, if you have any information on the case tonight, pick up the phone, make that call, help bring some justice to the family. Tonight's story comes to us from Homa Bash, reporter for WEWS in Cleveland, Ohio. Involves a 14-year-old girl who was struck by a car and killed. And still tonight, no justice for Chelsea Hill.
It is an intersection we drive through often. East 40th and Carnegie in Cleveland.
40th and Carnegie, there's a lady here, she's on the road.
But on this day, tragedy hit hard here.
This is the worst pain any mother or anybody can go through because you think about it every day.
Someone hit 14-year-old Chelsea Hill as she crossed the street. That someone dragged her body several feet with their car. That someone still driving around today knowing what they did.
I know they tired of living with the guilt, the pain.
The incident captured on grainy surveillance video. Trying to track down that car and that driver has been a challenge for investigators.
Well, the biggest challenge is that there's so many cars that fit the description. So many makes and models. The video we have isn't great. It's not crystal clear, it's dark, it's fuzzy.
The car, described as a late model dark-colored sedan, it had to have had noticeable damage to the front end. Police say numerous tips have been called in, but so far, all of them have been dead ends.
You know, I don't think it would be possible for the driver to not know that they hit something.
Justice for my baby, justice for Chelsea. Somebody to come forward, please.
Chelsea's mom, Annette, calls investigators at least twice a week, every single week, waiting for an update, praying for an answer.
You want to hate that person, you want to hate everybody, you want to be mad at everybody, but it ain't going to do no good. My baby is gone. All I'm asking for back is just justice. And just let me have a little peace in my heart.
So the car that hit Chelsea, that could be anywhere, but the person driving it and the people that know that person, they are likely still around. And that is who Cleveland police and Chelsea's family are hoping will speak up and help find her killer.
Here's the phone number, 216-252-7463. 216-252-7463. That is Crime Stoppers if you have any information related to the death of Chelsea Hill. Let me bring back in our investigators tonight, Erica Morris, Chris McDonough, still with us, private investigator Erica Morris, and the host of the interview room. Chris McDonough is also a former homicide detective. Here's my fear in this case. In a lot of these cases, there are really bad people, people who may have gotten into trouble for other things. A lot of the cases we cover, there are witnesses who probably know something but may fear coming forward. But in this one, my fear is that this is a driver that perhaps is by themselves, so there is no witness. This could be someone who has never committed another crime in their entire life, is carrying an incredible burden with them, but would never, get in trouble for something else and use the information to try to help themselves somehow, some way. I don't know. And to me, this one, it's 2015, and here we are. Erica, am I wrong to have a feeling on this one that there's a chance that someone was by themselves and may never come forward, and no one else other than the driver knows who did this?
Yes, it's a valid fear, but I firmly believe that every case is solvable. And that is in direct relation to the amount of effort, energy, and boots on the ground that is put into finding answers. This is absolutely a needle in a haystack. I do not think this was targeted. I don't think there's ever been any indication that this was targeted. This happened at 1 o'clock in the morning on a holiday in the dark. My fear is that the person was intoxicated and probably thinks they hit a deer in Cleveland. I would be looking at every accident report, every insurance claim, because insurance claims require an accident report to pay out. I'd be pulling Carfaxes. I would be getting as much enhancement on that video as possible. You have to go back to square one, look at the advancements in technology to see if they can clean up that film and get as much information possible out about damage to that dark sedan. We know it's a 4-door dark sedan, and do a boots on the ground push to try to drum up some information.
Let me ask you something, Chris McDonough, and this thought came to my mind because, you know, trying to identify even what type of car it is could help so much here. Is there no way to look at that video and use the video to come up with as a basis to make measurements about how long the car is, how far apart the tires are, to narrow what make and model it could be? Can't we do that, or is that a far-fetched idea to somehow use, you know, other objects that are in the video as a basis for coming up with some relatively precise measurements about the car? Because I know cars look alike, but I doubt that they all, when you line them up and measure them, are the same.
Yeah, no, that's actually an outstanding point, Vinnie, because you can do that. And obviously, I think there was some parts even left behind, or at least my understanding is there were some items with potential serial numbers. And then to your point, I think you can measure the rims or the wheels that would be able to give you, put that vehicle in a particular class of sedan, and then you can narrow it down in relationship to, you know, what manufacturers make that, because I'm assuming those parts, numbers are just, inventory numbers to probably a wide variety. And this shot right there to that rim, I think you may be able to trace that rim. That could be pretty critical to find out, okay, who sells those rims? Where can you buy them within the Cleveland area? And then, to Erica's point, you just got to be boots on the ground and start hitting your auto body shops. You got to hit your, auto zones, those types of places where these types of parts could potentially be purchased.
Chris McDonough, Erica Morse, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday night. Have a nice weekend. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Vinnie.